How many of you are using IoT in your business? Thank you. How many of you are not using IoT in your business? So it appears that there are few people who are undecided whether they are using IoT or not using IoT in their business. Okay, I'm Pankar of DG2O, and welcome to this session on how businesses can profit from data that comes out of their machines and their devices. I must thank you for being here, and I will try my best to ensure that the next 30 minutes is well spent for all of you. At the end of this session, hopefully you will be able to take away some ideas and perhaps some inspiration on how to implement IoT in your organization with the primary focus on making money out of it. As Ashwin said, I have a background in engineering, IT and statistics, and it's a mix that helps me enjoy my work in IoT very much. Before I begin, can I also request you that we keep the Q&A session at the end, and I'll run through the slides. Now, I will start with a curious story, a curious washroom story that I came across very recently, and I wanted to share this with you. Washrooms, after all, are moving from the mundane to the extraordinary with even, the love stories being weaved around them. So here's my question. If you were a washroom material supplier to institutional customers, how would you differentiate yourselves to grow your business? It's such a boring area, apparently. So my question is, how would you want to grow your business? What are the strategies you will implement? Let me tell you what a European washroom supplier did in order to differentiate themselves. And they were suppliers to very large corporations and institutional customers. They put sensors and instruments into various items within the washrooms of their customers, like soap dispensers and towel dispensers, etc. And by doing that, over a period of time, they were able to collect enough data to understand, the number of users that were using the washrooms for that particular customer. The time of the day it was more used, the time of the day it was less used, time of the year, for instance. Similarly, the user behavior. The user behavior in airports apparently were different from user behavior in football stadiums. So, they were able to, from the data that they collected, they were able to find out the difference in user behavior in different, contexts. Based on that, they were able to understand the consumption rate, specific to a particular kind of customer. They were able to put the cost per entry to the washroom, which was not available to them earlier. And based on this, they were able to put a new replenishment strategy. They were able to differentiate the pricing and buying strategies as well based on this. So, based on the data analyzed, they were able to differentiate themselves proactively. The operative word is proactively, in order to give a better service to their customers. And they had a mission of maximum hygiene and never empty, and that's something they were able to fulfill. So from a mundane washroom supplier, material supplier, they graduated to becoming a washroom partner with their customers. Now the key question here is that, look, what they did with the data was to analyze that and also do improvements within their own organization, and brought out their own, improve their strategies or build new strategies based on the data that they gave. Now the question is, were there opportunities also to share the data insights from the data that they collected with their customers in order to derive more value, provide more value to the customers? This is a critical question, because the point I'm driving at is this, that, it's, the amount of value that you can derive from data that you collect from your devices and machines is actually limitless. And it's only bound by the thinking that you do and the imagination that you have. And that's a very important point that to take away from here. So what was happening? When you start gathering data, you stop guessing and you start knowing exactly what's happening. So it takes the guesswork out of the gut feel out of the equation, and it helps you to arrive at decisions and take actions based on what's actually happening in the ground. So that helps you to differentiate and provide more value to your to the services and the products that you are building. Better processes, like lower costs, higher productivity, and so on. We all know about it. But crucially, it opens up avenues for new opportunities and also building better products. So new opportunities and better products which we will focus on are driven by the real knowledge based on real data of user behavior. When I say user behavior, when you collect so much data, you get to know whether the user is actually using your product or service or not. Many a time we see users, they buy your service but they don't use it. Whether they are abusing it, right? Whether they are using it for some unintended purpose. You never knew that your product could be used for that kind of a purpose. But that's what the data is giving you. Then things like duration of use, frequency use, whether the people have the skills to use it properly or not. So these are the things that are very valuable in I'm sorry, I have a bad throat today. Similarly, usage condition, the user's environment. Your product can be used in Kashmir, it can be used in Kanyakumari. But, the locales are different, the conditions are different, the environments are different. So, how do you use the data that you gather from different environments to help you to, to make decisions about how you can improve your product or add perhaps a new feature or eliminate something. Whether your user is maintaining your products properly or not, whether they are going by maintenance manuals that you have provided them and the training that you have provided, what kind of strategies are they using in maintenance, whether it's breakdown, preventive, condition monitoring. These are the things that you can keep collecting over a period of time if you take data out of them and monitor them on a regular basis. And similarly, performance of the product or the service at the end, which is again you can get on a real-time basis when you're collecting data from them. So now, as I said, you've taken out the guesswork from the equation. You have got real knowledge, and the real knowledge can help you drive actions. What kind of actions? You can proactively understand that perhaps your users, your customers need help or some kind of training. And how good it will be that you offer that help and training directly, straight away, rather than he or she feeling the pain of not being able to use your product properly. You can add a new feature. Perhaps that washroom supplier could have added a new feature to his service based on the data that he was collecting. Automate something which is at the moment error-prone and manual, because the data will stop things like, it's perhaps not being maintained properly. And whether in the next version of the product you want to automate that particular thing. Redesign based on shape, size, material, technology, or even you can redesign your service as well. Eliminate. When you gather insights, you will also be able to see that perhaps something that you have added to your product or your service is not required, you can eliminate it. Actions will drive value, and I hate to use the word disruption because it's so common now, but it is true that the more disruptive your actions are, the more value you can get. This is another example from a personal experience. This was a customer which was incorporating electrical circuits to their products. And the problem was to find the fault in the electrical circuit very quickly and locate the problem point very quickly. And that was their stated need. So what they needed was a faster testing method. But there was a hidden need as well. There will be always a hidden need. The customer will not realize it. You may not realize it if you are not looking for it. But as a service provider or a product maker, it is our duty to understand the customer's hidden need. And there was a hidden need of generational or breakthrough improvement in product and process efficiency, quality. So, what did we do? We helped them introduce a cutting-edge test technology. We found that for them and introduced it to them. This lowered the testing time from minutes to seconds. But what to do with the data that was residing? And it was a wealth of data that was residing in the testing machine. So we helped them build a business case for the management to show them that how analyzing the data that they're collecting over time can help them further. And it will help them further to the extent that, a faster testing will actually be overshadowed by the efficiencies that are derived, improvements that are derived by analyzing the data. So how we could find that based on data collected, they could find, they could help the vendor improve the supplies. They could do benchmarking between the plants and between the lines where the products was being manufactured, and therefore learn from each other. They could do product process improvement, operator training. They could identify who needed more training and who needed more skill in doing it. It helped them with capacity and the return on capital employed because it increases the capacity because faults were less. And of course, it also could lead to design improvement. So we projected them, and data analysis was the key. We projected them in the year one. You could see that the green part, which is the savings made because of faster testing was much higher. But as you move to year 2 and year 3, the savings pie was getting bigger, but the orange area, which was the savings due to better product and better process, was actually more than what they could achieve because of faster testing. So this, as I said, data analysis was key in deriving this, protection, and the customer was totally on board. The key was that whether we were looking at the data in this perspective, in this context, that we could improve their products and processes over a period of time. Now, what are the challenges to help you derive value from the data that you are collecting from your devices? To me, it's more of a software problem than the hardware problem. Large organizations, established organizations, believe me, I've worked in them and now I'm working with them, have a trouble of setting up an ecosystem which would help them to innovate. It's difficult because of a lot of problems, the habits, the processes they follow, there's bureaucracy out there, the general organization, DNA, we all know that. But as we are working in some of those organizations, so what to do? You have to show leadership with vision. You have to be very dynamic and ensure that you are able to build that kind of an ecosystem. Recruit hands-on doers with high motivation and ensure that the motivation is kept high. No layers and layers of management. Start with the end in mind. This is very important, with clear goals and plan. You should be able to do rapid prototyping and ensure that the market validates very quickly what you are trying to provide as a value. Partner with nimble innovators. Very important. There are smaller companies who are nimble or agile, and there's no harm and no shame in taking hands with them and asking them to partner with you in order to move you faster towards the goal. And believe me, this could be one of the game changers for you. Setting up for success, choose your projects carefully. All depend on, do a good brainstorming between all stakeholders. The stakeholders I not only mean people within the organization, but also outside of it, who are your partners. What are the problems? What are the new opportunities? What are the new markets opening up? Determine your success criteria. What will be the ROI? What will be the time to market? What is the value proposition that you're providing? What is the market and problem? The bigger the market, the bigger the problem size, the more the opportunity to create value for your company. Assemble the right team, include all stakeholders, as I said, and get all their contributions, including suppliers and partners and customers. Then, on a regular basis, monitor through constant feedback, because you would have made some assumptions at the beginning. You can't. Nobody can connect the dot from today to the future. As Steve Jobs said, you can only do it backwards. So you would have made some assumptions. Validate those assumptions as you go along, and rectify or course correct as you go along. So this is a curve, the evolution curve, right from the genesis of the idea to the point when your product or service becomes a commodity. And as you can see, you get the most benefit when you are tipping into the product area from the custom built item area. So your job is to ensure that you have to shorten the time duration between the genesis and the time when it becomes a product. Then only the risk is less. And when you are in the investment stage, it is possible that you would like to even abort, depending on the reviews that you're making and the monitoring that you're doing. So don't be afraid to abort your project. Now, there are some new as-a-service revenue models which have come up. They are quite in vogue today. I'll talk a bit about them. Some of them are quite old, but all of them have two things. Once they came up, they came up as a disruption, and secondly, they all have data as the backbone. Whether it's a product as a service, which means that you lease out the product, and only when it is being used, the customer pays for it. So that's the process as a service. You monitor the processes by connecting the processes, Industry 4.0, and help them derive insights and support them in some way. Anything as a service? Well, anything as a service. It could be, for instance, safety as a service for the washroom supplier who understood that there were many accidents in the washroom, and therefore whether they could support that in some way as an example only. So it could be anything as a service. I've given a few examples a bit. And of course, data as a service is a big one. You can acquire data, store them, analyze them, and report on them, and provide insights on them. So to sum up, data everywhere. But monetizing possibilities will depend on, I go back to the word, on our imagination. Possibilities need not mean profitability. Key is whether you can create value for your customers who are ready to pay for it. So that's absolutely being the key. I'll wax philosophical by ending this with a quote. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters in comparison to what lies within us. You must have heard of this, many of you. So there's a lot of things that are within us. There's a lot of things within the devices and the machines that you are trying to get data out of. So the world is open, take them out. The world has a lot of problems to be solved, and they're waiting to be solved. And IoT, I believe, with artificial intelligence, is going to be the future in solving many of those problems. At least a part of it is going to have a major role to play in solving those problems. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Any questions?
My name is Anand Lakshmanan, and I'm the CEO of a company called Sirpi Products and Services out of Bangalore. I'd like your comment on how far data visualization is used in IoT devices.
Data visualization is the output of the data that you collect. Finally, that is what is the output that is required by the end user. And if you ask me, that's definitely, the user part of it or the client part of it, absolutely the imperative part of it. How you visualize, and that's where again, how creative you are in order to present the data. Where data visualization is all about presenting data, right? And it also has to be, the way it is to be showed to the CEOs like you, and it will be showed to somebody, engineers on the shop floor, could be different. So again, it all depends on for whom you are building the data.
I guess my question was along the lines of, how prevalent it is, or how much is it lacking when it comes to IoTs in the industry, in your experience?
So you are saying that how much prevalent data visualization is in IoT? In my view, I can't really put a number to it or anything, but look, data visualization, away from the context of IoT has been there for a long time because of all the, all the data, even the financial data, which has nothing to do with IoT, nothing to do with sensors and collecting data from devices. They have been there for such a long time, and each kind of software, whether it's ERP systems or CRM systems and all, provide those kind of data. So, those kind of visualization. And with the, handles and mobiles now being more regularly used rather than, desktops and laptops, they have become more and more, ubiquitous in terms of use. So I would say that, if you are building an IoT application, you have to keep data visualization in your mind.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I have two questions. One is, can you explain about, you were talking about benchmarking. So if you can give a little bit light on benchmarking. Second question is about the big data. So how this big data and IoT can be analyzed?
Big data?
Big data.
Okay. Look, the first question was what benchmarking is. Now, benchmark is a very generic term. It's not specific to IoT. But in this context, what happened was that this company had several plants in different locations. And also they had, each plant had different lines for assembling the product. I'm not mentioning the company or the product because we are bound by, NDAs. But, benchmarking meant here that you were able to find out which plant and which line were doing better than you in terms of the KPI metrics that were coming out of the data that we are, for instance, what was the rejection rate? What was the rework rate? In say PPM coming out of the plant, or how many defectives were being produced. So they compared data between say plant A and plant B as an example, and they found that say plant B was doing better in the same model than plant A. So they went back and tried to find out what plant B was doing better so that they could incorporate those practices in plant A in order to improve themselves. And that's what I meant by benchmarking here. Does it make sense? Okay, with regard to big data is a lot of data, right? And different varieties of data. So when you say IoT, yes, there's a lot of data coming out every second, every microsecond sometimes, every millisecond. So, and there are, depending on the application, there are again varieties of data coming out. So obviously, big data, the advances the technologies have made in big data is actually supporting, implementation of IoT in a big way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So in that, how speed the data can be transferred from, analyzed and back to the customer. So do you think that will say feasible point?
Well, again, it all depends on the context and, and also the technology that you're using, which is advancing in a fast pace, and also how much money you're ready to pay for the speed that you want. Again, as I said, it all will depend on the application and also the context, whether you want, what is the speed that we sometimes, we are working with a company where we are getting some data out of a temperature data out of a motor, for instance, in a component, in an auto component. Now, they analyze data sometimes up to 60 data points per second, which is huge, right? So, but when we are doing this application, we say that it's really not technically feasible at this point with the budget that we have to do it. So, can we reduce it and can we utilize that this reduced rate of data capture to help you? This is absolutely right. The most I need is only 1 data point per second. So again, it also is contextual and also depends on how you speak with the customer and understand his requirement before you make a decision. Yeah.
See, we know that we can extract a lot of data from our plant or our machine. Few of the data which we can fetch from our machines, what are the direct uses of this data we know. And few data which we can really fetch, but till now we don't know what will be the,
what will be the use of the data?
What will be the use of this, we don't know. But still, do you think, is it, really worth to fetch the data and store it for the futuristic purpose? We really don't know as of now what will be the uses of that data. Since, fetching all this data will cost something directly to us or to the customer. So do you really think, is it worth to fetch and do some analysis?
No, obviously not. My personal view is that, again, if you looked at the timeline I showed, when you start brainstorming as to what you want to do in terms of your end goal, what you want to achieve. Based on that, you have a collective, you have your own, knowledge, but you have a team also and other stakeholders who can also impart with the knowledge and experience that they have. Based on that, you decide what data you actually want to collect in order to reach that goal. And you must filter the rest because, collecting data and transporting them, storing them is expensive. But obviously, as you go along, you solve one problem and then you want to solve another problem or improve on something, you will find that perhaps some other data that you were not utilizing earlier, you should be now utilizing. It's all based on trial and error, trial and error method as to what you require and what you don't require. So and therefore the data that you are actually filtering could be useful at some later stage. Or you may be aware that you could do something with that data, but that's not your priority at the moment. You don't want to solve all problems together, right? You want to solve step by step.